Given a string, we must return true if, after converting all uppercase letters into lowercase letters and removing all non-alphanumeric characters, the string is a palindrome. So, as a reminder, a palindrome is a word or phrase that reads the same forwards as it does backwards. For example, kayak is a palindrome because kayak spelled backwards is still kayak. Another example would be the word noon, because it reads the same both ways. However, for this problem, we also need to ignore all non-alphanumeric characters. An alphanumeric character is one that is either a letter or a digit. So for example, the string my gym is a valid palindrome because we would ignore the space character here. We are also going to make this case insensitive, so something like don't nod is still a valid palindrome because we would consider the uppercase and lowercase d's to be equivalent, and after ignoring the apostrophe and period at the end, this phrase reads the same forwards as it does backwards. So to figure out if a word is a palindrome or not, we're going to use a two-pointer approach. We'll initialize a pointer at the beginning and at the end of the string and compare those two characters. If they're equal, then we'll move the pointers inwards and compare the next set of characters. Since a palindrome reads the same forwards and backwards, each set of characters should be equal to each other all the way down to the middle. If at any point the characters are not equal to each other, then that means the string isn't a palindrome. But how are we going to handle non-alphanumeric characters and uppercase letters? To solve that problem, we're going to be using two Python string methods, the isAllNum method and the lower method. The isAllNum method checks if a string is alphanumeric. In other words, it checks if the string only consists of lowercase a through z, uppercase a through z, and the digits 0 through 9. If this is true and the string is alphanumeric, then the method will return true. If not, then it'll return false. The lower method will simply take a string, convert each character to lowercase, and return the lowercase string. For example, if the string was an uppercase a, then this method would return a lowercase a. Now that we know what these two methods do, let's look at the code and solve this in Python. Let's say that s, the string, is taco cat, with mixed case, a space between the two words, and an exclamation point at the end. I've also indicated the index of each character below it in gray. First, let's create two index variables at the beginning and end of the string. So L will start at 0, and R will be the length of S minus 1. So that's 9 minus 1, which equals 8. But before we start comparing the two characters, since we need to ignore non-alphanumeric characters and ignore case, we'll have to add a bit more extra logic before we compare them. So first, we'll enter a loop that'll keep going while L is less than R. In other words, until the two pointers meet in the middle. Then we'll check for a couple of things. If the character at index L is not alphanumeric, then we'll ignore it by incrementing the left pointer. Similarly, if the character at index R is not alphanumeric, then we'll skip it by decrementing the right pointer. If both of those conditions are false, in other words, if both characters are alphanumeric, then we'll compare those characters by first converting each character to lowercase, then checking for equality. If they are equal to each other, then we can continue on by moving both pointers inwards. Finally, if all those conditions were false, in other words, if both characters were alphanumeric but they did not equal each other, then that means that the string is not a palindrome, so we'll just return false immediately. So now let's check if the character at index L is alphanumeric. The character is a lowercase t, which is alphanumeric, so this condition is false, and we'll move on to the next condition. The character at index R is an exclamation point, which is not alphanumeric. This makes this condition true, so we're going to ignore that character by decrementing R, and then we'll loop again. The character at index L is still alphanumeric, and now the new character at index R is a lowercase t, which is alphanumeric. So now this condition is false, and we can move on to the next condition. The next step is to convert both characters to lowercase and check if they are equal to each other. They are both already lowercase, and they are both the letter t, so this condition is true. Since both characters are equal to each other, we can move on and increment L and decrement R. Then we loop again. The character at index L is an uppercase A, which is alphanumeric, so this is false, and we check the next condition. The character at index R is a lowercase a, which is also alphanumeric, so now we can compare the two. Since we apply the lower method here, we are comparing two lowercase a's, and since they are equal to each other, we can move the pointers inwards again by incrementing L and decrementing R. Next, the character at index L is an uppercase C, which is alphanumeric, and so is the character at index R. After converting both characters to lowercase and comparing them to each other, we see that they are equal, so let's move both pointers inwards again. Next, the character at index L is a lowercase o, which is alphanumeric, but the character at index R is a space character, which is not alphanumeric, so let's go ahead and skip it and decrement R. But now when we check this condition at the top, we see that L is not less than R. They are equal to each other. That makes this condition false, so we can just exit the loop without even checking the character at that index. This is because they are pointing at the same character, and a character is always going to be equal to itself. So we know that having a single letter in the middle completes the palindrome, so we'll return true. Taco cat is a valid palindrome. Now let's try an example where the string is not a palindrome. Let's say the string is racer, but we have a few extra characters at the beginning. Again, we'll initialize our 2 pointers and then start the loop. The character at index L is a period, which is not alphanumeric, so let's skip it by incrementing L and loop again. The character at index L is now a comma, which is still not alphanumeric, so we'll increment L again. Now the character at index L is an R, which is alphanumeric, so now let's check the character at index R. This character is also an R, so we can now compare the 2 characters, and they are equal to each other. So we'll move both pointers inwards and loop again. The character at index L is an A, which is alphanumeric. The character at index R is an E, which is also alphanumeric. So now let's compare the 2 characters, and we can see that they are not equal to each other. That makes this condition false, so we end up going into this else block and return false, which means that the word racer is not a palindrome.